Yeah, that's so.
All I ever wanted was a black Grand National. Black Grand National. Black Grand National.
Life gets real tricky, no matter where you're at with it. I never pick and choose what stories to relate to. All of them are relative. Like my mama say though, different strokes for different folks. A good old saying can snap you back into reality sometimes, but in the moment of confusion, the best thing you can do is find yourself a GNX. Make you realize that the only thing that matters in life is that original paperwork, that TL2 code, one of 547. Yeah, I finally changed. It's over with. DHZ. My big cousin Pat Dog smiling down. Anybody want to line it up? I'll pull him off the floor and flip your March 19th, 2024. Kendrick Lamar, or should I say Jojo Ruski, posted on his alternative Instagram account that he got his hands on a GNX, Grand National Experimental, a limited edition high-performance version of the Buick Regal Grand National from 1987. Only 547 GNXs were ever produced, and with the ability to go from 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds. Back in 1987, this was the fastest car in the world, beating out Corvettes, Ferraris, Porsches, and Lamborghinis. It was pretty fitting for Kendrick Lamar to purchase this vehicle. Not because the car's high performance or exclusivity reflects Kendrick Lamar's legacy or approach to the rap game, but on a more personal level, Buick released the Regal Grand National and its high performance exclusive variant, the Grand National Experimental, aka the GNX, in 1987. The same year, Kendrick Lamar Duckworth was born. And the even crazier part is that when Kendrick was born, his father drove him home from the hospital in a 1987 Buick Regal, the parent model of the GNX. And according to Kendrick, they were bumping Big Daddy Kane on the way home. Now remember, there's only 547 GNX vehicles in existence, and Kendrick Lamar is the proud owner of one. You probably know that if you've been following the visuals from his Super Bowl halftime show, the GNX Stadium tours, or several of the other aspects of his massive victory lap in the last year and a half. But as far as when Kendrick Lamar actually became the proud owner of one of these super rare cars, and when the vision for the GNX album may have started forming, that could have been as far back as 2023, because a lot of people didn't realize that he actually included a GNX vehicle in his visuals for his performance with Baby Keem at the Camp Flog Gnaw Festival. And in order to understand the concept, if there even is one, of GNX, it is important to understand this time period. 2023. Kendrick Lamar is about a year removed from Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. The world is assuming we'll get another Baby Keem project, or maybe even a Drake album, before we get the next Kendrick one. Aside from a Baby Keem collab and a verse on a Beyonce song, we hadn't heard much from Kendrick Lamar, and logically so. Again, he just got off of giving the world Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, an album guided through therapy sessions as Kendrick faces his greatest flaws, dissects the cycles of trauma that his culture has lived through, and comes to terms with the fact that he may not possess the power to save it, concluding the album with the declaration, "Maybe it's time to break it off, run away from the culture to follow my heart. Sorry I didn't save the world, my friend. I was too busy building mine again. I choose me. I'm sorry." Now, I would explain to you the significance of Mr. Morale when looking at its contrast in GNX, but I think Cole from the Dissect podcast does a much better job because he spent 6 months writing 100,000 words dissecting every line of this project.
I study
Mr. Morale
for a living.
And I think there's deep significance when we're looking at the context of GNX. See, on Mr. Morale, we're introduced to Eckhart Tolle, who is Kendrick Lamar's therapist on the album. Cole explains that one quote can unlock the entire theme of Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, and that comes from Eckhart in his book, A New Earth, where he says, "The external state of the world is always a reflection of the internal state of the mind." Basically, our outer world mirrors our inner world. The conditions, circumstances, and experiences that took place within our environment shaped who we are internally. And Kendrick frames the entire album around this concept. Disc 1 is The Big Steppers, which captures the chaos of the external world caught in cycles of trauma and ego. Meanwhile, Disc 2, Mr. Morale sees Kendrick Lamar turn inward. He seeks therapy, confronts himself, and stares in the mirror while trying to heal inherited pain.
But Kendrick takes it one step further, because take another look at Tole's quote. The external state of the world is always a reflection of the internal state of the mind. Just as each individual reflects humanity, the two halves of the album reflect one another. Each disc contains 9 tracks, and like a mirror, the reflection is reversed. If you flip the order of disc 2, every song aligns with the counterpart on disc 1, creating a structural mirror image. Worldwide Steppers reflects Mr. Morale, Ricch Interlude mirrors Savior Interlude, N95, a song about masks, reflects Mother I Sober, when the masks come all the way off. This is why the album ends with Mirror, reinforcing both the album's structure and Tole's message, that healing yourself is inseparable from healing the world.
Now, shout out to Cole from Dissect. I highly suggest you guys check out his breakdowns on Mr. Morale. They're phenomenal. But let's take it back to GNX. Well, first, let's end off on Mr. Morale here. Again, Mr. Morale concludes with Kendrick Lamar looking in that mirror, declaring that he's choosing himself. He's choosing his well-being and authenticity over the ego and the mask. He accepts imperfection. And I think GNX is a direct result of a person as accomplished, as praised, someone who's dealt with that savior complex like Kendrick Lamar has, while also dealing with his fair share of trauma, stemming back to his environment and his early childhood. Once that person has accepted their flaws and their imperfections and looked into the mirror and gained a more authentic sense of self, the confidence we're seeing exuded on GNX and the stories being told paint the picture of a man who is now confident to embrace and celebrate who he is and the environment he came from.
Today I show you I learn from those mistakes.
If Mr. Morale was Kendrick stripping the ego, disassociating Kendrick the human from Kendrick the artist, the superstar, and what that artist means not just to his family or his personal circle, but to the world, then I believe GNX is Kendrick defining his excellence, his legacy, understanding he's not perfect and the world is not perfect, but embracing and celebrating the inner and outer for what they are. The opening lines on the album in Whacked Out Murals start off with Kendrick letting us know that somebody tried disrespecting his legacy, aka whacking out his mural. But he's not mad, he accepts this is what comes with the game when you're at this level. The love and hate is definite without a cure.
But it's regular for me, yeah, that's for sure.
There's no saving the outer world. You have to embrace the imperfections, right? That's all the way at the beginning of GNX. By the middle of GNX, on literally the song directly in the middle, Reincarnated, Kendrick explores how artistic genius and spiritual struggle are passed down through generations. The first 2 verses being rapped through the perspective of musicians from previous generations, Kendrick tells the story about learning from past lives. And in the 3rd verse, he's finally rapping from his own perspective, where he turns sin into wisdom, pain into purpose, and music into a form of redemption. And by the 3rd quarter of GNX, on the Heart Part 6, Kendrick reflects on the foundation of what made him the MC and the artist that he is today, how he acquired his skill set through studying his fellow TDE members like Ab-Soul and J-Rock, how he evolved and received the tools to build himself into the person he is today, and where he wants his legacy to go from this point moving forward, emphasizing that the next chapter on this journey will be elevating into the role of an executive. Now remember, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers concludes with Kendrick Lamar looking himself in the mirror, owning up to his character flaws and past actions of infidelity, and accepting that it's time to focus on healing himself rather than healing the culture. Now, on the final track of GNX, Gloria, this chapter concludes with Kendrick penning a love letter to the culture he was raised in and the culture that defines him. He's writing about his relationship with his pen, aka the ability he's been gifted to craft the music that has created this very legacy that, while it may be imperfect, still deserves to be celebrated. So while Mr. Morale focuses on Kendrick the human, I believe GNX focuses on the legacy of Kendrick Lamar. Once the trauma has been dealt with, the mask has been taken off, the savior complex has been stripped, and you're emotionally capable of embracing and being proud of who you are. That's why I think it's so essential to center this album around the sound that Kendrick grew up in and grew up on. And let Kendrick tell it to you himself. When crafting this album, he wanted to go way back to the raw elements of the genre that he loved as a kid. Great raps, hard-hitting beats, something akin to a Doggy Style or a Chronic.
My cousins was like DJ Quick and Dre, these folks that my people was playing. So I always had that DNA. And you know, you heard that DNA a little bit on Good Kid, Mad City, but I wanted to tell my story first, right? Fast forward to GNX, I felt it was just a perfect time because not only the energy was lost, but it was the energy that was bubbling inside of me as well. I wanted to go back to the forefront of just the bite and just the grit of rap, just all raps.
It's no secret that Kendrick Lamar left some injuries on the emotions of your favorite pop star after that rap battle.
I study rap battles for a living.
But speaking of injuries, we gotta talk about America's largest injury law firm, Morgan & Morgan. For over 35 years, Morgan & Morgan's team of lawyers have been fighting to make sure people like you, who may have suffered an injury, will get what you deserve. If you get hurt in a car accident or at work, or if an insurance company tries to lowball you, Morgan & Morgan is the largest injury law firm in the US that will fight to get you the money you might be owed. They have over 1,000 attorneys, offices in all 50 states, and they've recovered over $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. For example, one of their clients in Florida got $12 million after a work accident, even though their insurance company was only ready to offer $350,000. So when you hire Morgan & Morgan, it's like bringing in a legal army, and their fee is free unless they win your case. If you want them to evaluate your injury case for free today to see if you qualify for their legal support, you can check out the link in the description, the pinned comment, or the QR code you see on the screen. So let's go back to this caption that Kendrick Lamar posted when he revealed to the world that he was one of 547 people in the world who owned a GNX vehicle. Because I don't know if it was intentional, but I feel like this caption, this message that Kendrick sends here, merges the themes between Mr. Morale, everything we would see from Kendrick Lamar after Miss Morale, and then of course all those actions culminating within GNX. Life gets real tricky no matter where you're at with it. AKA, life could get complicated no matter what your circumstances are. Whether you're still stuck in an impoverished community, whether you're struggling navigating fame and success. Kendrick says, I never pick and choose what stories to relate to. They're all relative, emphasizing that everyone's experience, all stories share common truth. And that was the major theme at the end of Mr. Morale, where he turns the mirror onto us. He's not the savior. We have to look within, look at ourselves, and understand again that our internal behaviors are a direct reflection of the environment that we live in. And then he says, but in the moment of confusion, the best thing you can do is find yourself a GNX. Make you realize that the only thing that matters in life is that original paperwork. One of 547. AKA, in those moments of doubt, in those moments of confusion, trauma, pain, or suffering, the best thing you can do is find clarity, truth, or higher meaning through legacy. In Kendrick's case, it's his art. Maybe to you, it's your spirituality. And that original paperwork might refer ultimately to authenticity, right? The GNX being that exclusive vehicle, one of 547, that original paperwork, that's proof of who you are. In moments of confusion and doubt, embrace what makes you unique. Embrace your legacy. And I mean, guys, these final lines here, yeah, I changed. It's over with. Anybody want to line it up? I'll pull him off the floor and flip your stuff. This is Kendrick Lamar right here acknowledging that through the therapy that was documented on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, he can now acknowledge that he's transformed. Mentally, spiritually, personally, artistically, he's signaling a new chapter. And that chapter was rooted in the competitive spirit that defines Kendrick's culture, his environment, hip-hop.
I love when artists grit their teeth.
You created this massive cultural award-winning anthem out of a battle rap song.
My intent from day one was to always keep the nature of it as a sport. I think a lot of people was putting rap to the back, and you didn't see that grit, you didn't see that bite anymore.
He issues out a warning right here, 3 days before his verse on Like That dropped, which kickstarted, of course, the monstrous run that would lead up to GNX. He says it right here. Anybody want to line it up? I'll flip your stuff. He was letting us know right here that he fully embraced who he is, and he's changed, he's evolved. And I think that's why GNX as a project deals so heavily in the theme of reincarnation, right? I mean, forget the album, the teaser, which featured that song that we still haven't gotten, the tiramisu body song, whatever you want to call it. The first bar in that track, he raps, reincarnated with love, my Gemini twin back powering up. Squabble Up, the second track off the project, starts off similarly with Kendrick opening with the bars, reincarnated, I was stargazing. Life goes on, I need all my babies. He wants it all, right? DOT, the money, power, respect. And we heard him echo these same sentiments on 616 in LA, where he rapped, I know this type of power is gonna cost, but I live in circadian rhythms of a shooting star. At this point in his chapter, he feels equipped and healed to handle this type of power. On 616, he's talking about being aligned with the highest stars, and on Squabble Up, he's emphasizing that once again, saying that he's transformed, he's reincarnated, he's evolved, and embraced this higher star power. Life goes on, you have to come to terms with the past in order to move forward. And at this point, he declares, I need all my babies, right? And this sentiment is echoed again on the fourth track, Man at the Garden, where Kendrick professes that due to the man that he's become, due to the codes he stood by and the good that he's done, he deserves it all. He deserves everything. But it was only after going through that therapy, addressing the trauma, and evolving that he was able to reincarnate and tap into this higher spirit, be, again, powered up. And he would document that reincarnation in detail, again, on the song Reincarnated, where he paints the picture that his artistic genius stems from past generations, and that you have to turn your pain into purpose. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of the Kendrick Lamar album theories, right? Where each album from his catalog represents a different form of media, or is told through a different medium of media. Section 80 is structured like a novel with different chapters. Good Kid, Mad City is obviously a short film. It says it on the album cover. To Pimp a Butterfly is a poem that Kendrick reads continuously, and it progresses as the album does. Damn is a magazine, with each title reading like a magazine header. And Mr. Morale is a theater play.
I'm not sure if you ever noticed this, but there's actually a connection between each and every single Kendrick Lamar album, and it's that they each represent a different media format. So let's start off with Section 80. This is actually a novel. If you pay attention to songs like Chapters 6 and 10, if you pay attention to the narrator, the way that it starts off the album with everyone telling personal stories, it feels like a book and a novel. Then you go on to GKMC, it's obviously a movie, a short film by Kendrick Lamar on the title. Not only that, but if you pay attention to the track list and even all the skits, extremely cinematic, you can listen to it in different orders, it feels like a movie. Then To Pimp a Butterfly is actually a poem and is poetry, because if you go through the track list, there's a poem to Tupac that's instilled within the writing of the album. Then you go on to Damn, that's a magazine. If you pay attention to the font on the top of Damn, it replicates the same font as Time magazine, and if you pay attention to every single song, it's formatted like a headline. Then, if you go on to Miss Morale and the Big Steppers, it's actually a theater play. If you go into the album, you see that there's different acts, and within the narration, Whitney actually admits that, hey, we're going into Act 2 now.
Now you have to ask yourself, where does GNX fit into this mold? Well, like I already broke down for you guys, in my eyes, this album tells the tale of Kendrick Lamar embracing who he is, playing the game by his rules, and documenting his evolution and this final state that he's now in, right? With the different segments of the album. From the beginning, where he's reincarnated with love, to the middle, with the song Reincarnated. The third quarter with the Heart Part 6, where he documents the pillars of what formed Kendrick the artist and where he plans to take it. And then by the outro, he's documenting his ups and downs and his relationship with his creativity, with his pen. So for all these reasons and more, my theory, and I could be wrong, but this is just my theory, and I'm going to explain to you guys why, I believe GNX is either narrated through the medium of a video game or a radio station. I've seen a lot of people say that it gives off a mixtape feel, and I agree with that as well, but I don't think that's a media form, right? Like the same way that a magazine would be, or a film. A mixtape is just a form of packaging music. When you think of GNX through the perspective or the lens of a video game, you can understand the themes of reincarnation and powering up a little stronger, right? The entire project is packed with states of different lives, levels, adversaries, and a final win state. Aside from that, the regionalized sound of GNX, the sonic flavors of the West Coast, the mixtape or home cassette being popped into your car as you're driving around, kind of mirrors the vibe of a tailored radio station on a video game like Grand Theft Auto, right? When you're driving around in the car listening to a certain station, running people over and all that in the game, of course.
Spicy.
Thematically, the album is mainly about reincarnation and powering up. Obviously, Kendrick talking about deserving it all and entering his final form, and it's parallel to a gamer achieving or unlocking a new or final level. The stylization of the lowercase track titles, all the track names being in lowercase, contrasted with the all caps album title of GNX, it kind of gives the user interface feel of in-game mission names versus level headers. And then, of course, you have the animated characters that Kendrick portrays throughout the project, like the ad-libs on Peekaboo, the bing bop boom boom bop bam, the mustard line on TV Off, the video game style instrumental on the title track GNX, or even the combat-centric tracks like Squabble Up. They evoke this vibe of feeling like you're fighting off the final boss, or you're in these little mini games. His pen, of course, would be the final boss. And the structure of the tracklist overall kind of flows like a game. It's chaotic in nature, kind of going from one sound to the next. He starts off by airing his grievances out on whacked out murals. He proceeds through phases of desires for winning on Man at the Garden, then reflecting on past lives and inner battles on Reincarnated. And again, it ends with the final boss on Gloria, his pen, where all his power stems from. Ultimately, GNX is Kendrick Lamar playing the game his own way and winning. And we saw him take this theme a step further with the Super Bowl performance, right? The entire stage design referenced a console controller, and the opening scene had him emerging from a GNX car, immediately giving the impression of pressing start on a game. The bulk of the performance consisted of songs from GNX as he's playing the Great American Game. And if you pay attention, most times that he plays tracks off GNX is when he's losing lives in the game. Samuel L. Jackson says it's too loud, it's too brash, it's too ghetto, as he does songs like Squabble Up, or he loses a life when he does Man at the Garden, or they're tempting him not to perform songs like TV Off or Not Like Us, because that's not how you win the game in the system's eyes.
I want to perform their favorite song, but you know they love the suit.
But you know they love the suit. But you know they love the suit.
What song?
Yeah, that song.
The entire album is situated throughout this performance that is based off Kendrick Lamar playing this game, trying to beat the system. But remember on Mr. Morale, you can't save the outside world. You're a direct reflection of it. You have to embrace the environment that you came from and embrace your own inner flaws because they're a direct reflection of the society around you. And you gotta love yourself for who you are. And that's exactly what Kendrick Lamar is doing on GNX. He details exactly who he is through the regional sound that derives from his hometown, from his childhood. And by accepting, embracing, and being confident in who he is, that is how Kendrick Lamar wins the game. That's how he becomes a one of one, just like the GNX, a high-performing one of one. Now, aside from GNX obviously paying homage to Kendrick's hometown, which we may or may not touch on shortly depending on where this video goes. But like Kendrick had described, this album encapsulates his childhood, what he grew up on, what defined him at an early stage, what he loved as he grew up, the music you could just throw on in a GNX and drive around to. And I think that's very prevalent in the different samples that are sprinkled throughout the project. Squabble Up flips Debbie Debs When I Hear Music. Luther contains a sample of If This World Were Mine, performed by Luther Vandross, but originally by Marvin Gaye. Man at the Garden contains an interpolation of Nas's One Mic. Hey Now contains an interpolation of Scotty by D4L. Reincarnated obviously samples the Tupac song Made Guys. TV Off contains an interpolation of Biggie's song Kick in the Door. And The Heart Part 6 samples Use Your Heart by SWV. So as you can see, there's a lot of pivotal moments and music throughout different eras of black art that weave throughout this project. And he's not just flipping samples that you hear in the background of the instrumentals on these songs. The homage that's paid is very intentional. And sometimes it's very in your face, like on Reincarnated, where he almost sounds like he's channeling Tupac the way he's delivering his verses, and of course the way the beat is flipped. Songs like Luther and The Heart Part 6 contain very prevalent samples, you hear them very clearly, but songs like Man at the Garden, TV Off, and even Hey Now contain these interpolations or these flips that you really have to pay attention to actually catch them. It's all part of the game. Now, as far as who handled the production on the project, it's very concentrated in a few core names. You have Soundwave, who's credited on almost every single track, a longtime producer of Kendrick Lamar's music. You have Jack Antonoff, who has worked closely with Soundwave, who's worked closely with Taylor Swift as well. He's credited as a producer on 11 of the 12 tracks off of GNX. And then, of course, you have Mustard, who we'll touch on later in this video, but he played a pivotal role, I believe, in kind of defining the more triumphant, celebratory, aggressive bangers off of the project and really picking up where they left off with Not Like Us. And as far as the content of the project, I mean, we touched on my theories of it, but subjective takes aside, when you look at this album front to back, it really takes you on a hero's journey. This is a very common template of stories that involve a hero who goes on an adventure. Basically a story structure that describes a hero's transformative quest. It's a cyclical journey that involves a hero leaving their ordinary world for an unknown one, facing trials and significant crisis, and ultimately returning transformed with new wisdom or abilities. Now, Whacked Out Murals, the intro track, functions as Kendrick Lamar's call to adventure, his mission statement opener. The vandalized mural is the inciting incident, a public disrespect that crystallizes betrayal, envy, or the cost of fame. And from there, Kendrick sets the stakes. He's been tested, he's lost people, he's watched his peers act performatively. So how does he respond? Does he cave into the pressure? No, he hardens his code. He keeps feelings out the way, he works hard, he doesn't trust the fake love he's been given, and he doubles down on what he deserves. He puts that Anita Baker on in his GNX, and he cruises with purpose. And the whole project is like a cruise through Kendrick's life. He starts it off on this track, mixing personal grievance, like fake allies, people not showing him support, and he sets some moral choices. Is he going to confront or fold? Is he going to forgive or exterminate? The track is not about bitterness, but instead about awakening or ignition, since we're talking about a GNX. Kendrick documents the wound, formulates the rules of engagement, revs the engine, and prepares to play and win the game on his own terms. And from here, I think you can look at the album again through the lens of the hero's journey through different phases. Phase 1 is trials, the adversity Kendrick's faced with, and the methods he'll use to burn the bridges and overcome the odds. Phase 2 is lineage, where Kendrick looks back at the artists and the sounds that came before him, realizing he's part of a long chain of resilience, how the black artists and the city that he's from shaped his own creativity, carrying their legacies forward. Phase 3 is Kendrick powering up through celebratory tracks like Peekaboo, posse cuts like GNX, or tracks like The Heart Part 6, where he literally takes you through the different levels and stages of his evolution as an artist, documenting the roadmap for how he plans on evolving and elevating moving forward. And then finally, the last stage of the journey is reflection and gratitude in Gloria. But let's take it back to the trials phase. After Whacked Out Murals, we have Squabble Up, and this is, in my opinion, the most aggressive point in this first phase of the project. In Whacked Out Murals, he's reflecting on the love and the hate, and how he'll deal with the adversity within the industry moving forward in order to take the crown. But by Squabble Up, this is the moment he enters full combat mode, before reaching the emotional calm of Luther and Man at the Garden. The phrase squabble up obviously means stand your ground or fight back, and that's exactly what the song represents. Kendrick reasserting his dominance after being challenged, both in hip-hop and in life. He opens up by calling himself reincarnated, linking back to the album's theme of rebirth and reincarnation, professing he's no longer the same man from his old eras. And he's flexing on this record, talking about owning his masters, IP ownership, the blueprint is by me, proving his worth through independence, dismissing fakeness. This is the battle stage, where the hero faces his first real test of strength and integrity, and he's showing the world he can survive confrontation, betrayal, and noise without losing focus. But by the time the next track, Luther, rolls around, Kendrick has released that rage and transitions into peace, healing, and love, marking the duality between battle in Squabble Up and growth in later tracks of the trial phase. Luther is where Kendrick starts finding brief peace and human connection amidst the chaos. After GNX starts off a little angry and defensive, this song shows Kendrick trying to breathe again and remember what still feels good in life: love, connection, and peace. Obviously, the song adopts a more soft and soulful sound, and Kendrick is saying that even in a hard, unfair world, concrete flowers can grow, and he wants to protect the people that he loves and build something better. It fits into the trials phase of this album because it's one of those emotional tests. Instead of fighting his enemies, he's learning how to let his guard down and stay human. Love and empathy are part of his strength, not a distraction from it. Then we have Man at the Garden, which is the heart of the trials phase. This is a song that Kendrick Lamar, in an interview during his Super Bowl rollout, he had actually said this is the most important song off of the project.
Projects, it always be that one record I feel like that I want everyone to hear, you know what I'm saying? In order to push the narrative or just the message and the tone that I want to get across. To preserve a space for that one that I want everyone to hear, that's what pushes me, man. That's why I like the Man at the Garden.
And I could see why this song is so important to Kendrick. This is when he stops fighting others and starts confronting himself. After the chaos is squabble up, he moves inwards. He's no longer proving strength through aggression, but instead through reflection and through discipline. Of course, the phrase, "I deserve it all," becomes his mantra. It's a declaration that every ounce of his success, his inner peace, and the respect he's earned comes from sacrifice, integrity, and faith. And in the lyrics, he's listing both material and spiritual awards like stock investments, good health, relationships with God, as proof that his growth is complete and deserved. But beneath that confidence, there's still tension. He's angry that others question his worth, with bars like, "It angers me to know how the lames can speak." But throughout these questions, he still keeps himself grounded in peace, purpose, legacy, and self-respect. It's here where Kendrick is standing at the garden gates, symbolic of peace, heaven, or fulfillment, and he demands entry, not through arrogance, but because he's endured every trial with honesty and with vision. It's the moment in the game where the hero looks back at everything he survived and declares, "I've earned my spot at this level." And symbolically, again, with this song being an interpolation of Nas's song One Mic, which came at the height of his beef with Jay-Z, he's kind of referencing and drawing parallels to his own beef with Drake.
I study rap battles for a living.
And speaking of that beef, this entire album kind of acts as a victory lap after the battle, right? And Hey Now, the next track off GNX, is that brief moment of celebration throughout the trials phase of the project. It's a short burst of confidence right after the heavy reflection of Man at the Garden. It's the moment where Kendrick, having earned his self-worth, re-enters the world with composure and confidence. The different chants throughout the track, like, "I'm way too important to ever let you slide on me again," that sounds like both a chant and a warning. He's reclaiming his space, his throne. He's reminding everyone he's too focused to ever be fazed by the BS. And the track is braggadocious, but it has a very clever way of mixing in humor within the bravado. Bars like, "If they talk about playing ball, they could take it up with Jordan." It's bald heads in the heckler for all endorsements. He's mocking his rivals with bars like, "They be screaming out P, but their resume's boof," or "It gets spooky every day in October." We know who that's about. And ultimately, this song feels like a scene in the hero's journey where he starts winning battles, but he knows the war isn't over. And it transitions perfectly into Reincarnated, even with the heavy contrasts and sounds, because this is where Kendrick stops flexing and starts reflecting on why he fought in the first place. Reincarnated begins the lineage phase of GNX. This is where Kendrick stops fighting external battles and starts looking backwards, tracing his soul through time to understand where his genius, his flaws, and his purpose stem from. And in my opinion, this could be his most spiritual and most cinematic song to date. He displays the direct connection to generations of artists before him and how their pain and brilliance lived through him. Verse 1 starts off with Kendrick saying, "I did past life regression last year and it effed me up. Reincarnated on this earth for 100 plus. He's claiming that his creative spirit has lived through many lives before this one. He then embodies what many believe to be John Lee Hooker, who's a blues guitarist who revolutionized his genre but fell into greed and ego. Kendrick emphasizes this on bars where he raps, "I manipulated power as I lied to the masses, died with my money, gluttony was too attractive." And it's in this first verse where Kendrick is showing that talent without purpose can lead to self-destruction. Success can corrupt you, and this mirrors Kendrick's own struggles with fame. The second verse shifts to the perspective of a Chitlin Circuit singer who many believe to be Billie Holiday, a jazz legend whose voice was described as angelic, straight from heaven, but whose life was destroyed by addiction. Kendrick raps, "Heroin needles had me in the fetal position, restricted. I needed drugs. To me, an 8-ball was like penicillin." And he uses her story to show how trauma and talent, unfortunately, often coexist. Her suffering becomes a warning. Artistic brilliance can be both divine and deadly. And by the third verse, Kendrick Lamar returns to the present. He starts the verse off rapping, "My present life is Kendrick Lamar." So he's obviously speaking as himself, but he's also speaking as Lucifer, the fallen angel of music, which symbolizes the duality between pride, rebellion, and creativity that's discussed in the stories of the artists that were mentioned in previous verses. Throughout this verse, Kendrick has a dialogue with God, where he questions if he's finally redeemed, rapping, "Father, did I get it right? Everything I did was selfless." And God responds by challenging him to let go of his pride, saying, "Your pride has to die." And through this conversation, Kendrick realizes that he and Lucifer share the same story. They were both gifted, both rebelled, and both seek forgiveness through art. God reminds him that music itself was Lucifer's original gift, saying, "My greatest music director was you." And by the end, Kendrick accepts his role as a redeemed creator, rapping, "I rewrote the devil's story just to take our power back." And ultimately, this song represents Kendrick Lamar embracing his ancestry, the spiritual bloodline of black musicians who carried pain, faith, abandonment, and truth through their sound. And he's acknowledging that his art is built on theirs, and that their sins and sacrifices are part of his story too. And by tracing the lives of musicians from past generations, from the rebellion in the first verse, to the suffering and addiction in the second verse, to Lucifer's final fall in the third verse, Kendrick realizes that every generation is born again and carries both the mistakes and the wisdom from the previous one. And the ultimate lesson of this record is that in order to truly evolve, you must honor those who came before you, forgive yourself, and use your music to heal rather than harm. And that's what he does on the next track, TV Off. Still part of the lineage phase of the hero's journey, as Kendrick is making multiple callbacks to his hometown with bars like "Walk in New Orleans with the etiquette of LA," the overall West Coast production laced by mustard, calling back to legends like Biggie with the "kick in the door" interpolation. But if you notice, just like shifting levels in a video game, GNX is constantly navigating through waves of different emotions and different sound shifting. Right off the bat with the project, we saw he jumps into the chaos of whacked out murals and Squabble Up, transitions it into the smooth calm of Luther and Man at the Garden, and now here you get the deep self-reflection of Reincarnated, which then quickly shifts into the victorious energy of TV Off, showing how every mood, every beat marks a new stage of growth in this journey. And throughout the project, there's a constant theme of disappointment in how rare real loyalty and integrity are. We saw this in Whacked Out Murals, and we're seeing it again in TV Off, with the chorus saying, "Few solid guys left, but it's not enough." Kendrick's surrounded by fame, betrayal, ego, but he's still determined to stay authentic, rapping, "We survived outside, all from the music," drawing back to the themes from Reincarnated, where he emphasizes that the power and peace that he gains within his own life comes from the message within the music and the way he navigates stardom. And ultimately, turning his TV off, aside from potentially meaning, canceling that guy, whipping his butt, I think it emphasizes the broader theme of watching the party die, right? Shutting out the fake, the propaganda, and the distractions, cutting the noise to focus on the truth and purpose. And ultimately, Kendrick's purpose throughout all of 2024, the victory lap of a year that finalized with the release of GNX, that was all rooted in the unity of his people. And no song better represents Kendrick's love for his lineage than Dodger Blue. It's Kendrick's proudest embrace of where he comes from, LA. He name drops the places that raised him, like Gardena, Compton, Westchester, King Drew, and over a bright West Coast beat, Kendrick flips back and forth between the album's two most prominent emotions, toughness and pride, professing that outsiders should not fake love for LA if they don't understand its reality, rapping, "Don't say you hate LA when you're not traveling past the 10. And after chasing his spiritual ancestors on Reincarnated, Dodger Blue brings it home. The lineage isn't just musical or historical, it's geographical. On Dodger Blue, Kendrick is honoring his city, his people, and the energy that made him. And it's at this point in the project where he powers up. This is the next phase of GNX, of the hero's journey, transformation. This is when Kendrick truly levels up. It starts off with Peekaboo, a simple banger with a triumphant sound and message, another middle finger to the music industry and his ops. What are they talking about? They're talking about nothing. And this to me is where Kendrick really begins his victory lap. Because at this point in the project, he's already come to terms with the people who are against him, the enemies he's made, the mistakes that artists of previous generations have made before him. He knows how to avoid them. He knows how to navigate this industry. He knows how to play the game. And at this point, he knows what he wants, right? I deserve it all. He's rewriting the devil's story just to take the power back. But we see him write his own story on The Heart Part 6. In my opinion, his most expansive detail into the start to finish, come up to present moment narrative of Kendrick Lamar that he's ever given us in his entire career. But before we touch on that, I gotta again shout out Cole from Dissect Podcast. I'm gonna try to throw in a clip right here. He breaks down one of the bars on Peekaboo in such a mind-blowing way where it's like the way Kendrick delivers these bars on this track is so simple, but even in the simplicity, there's so much depth, so much wordplay behind what he's saying. I'm gonna try to chuck it in here.
Peekaboo 80 pointers like a Kobe game. So this is a play obviously on 81-point game, a Kobe Bryant, which was in Toronto, by the way. But here comes the dissectable moment. 7.62s, I'll make him plank. So this is the caliber of ammunition in an AK-47, make him plank. Obviously, it's like allusion to killing. But in Kobe's 81-point game, he had 7 3-pointers, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists. 7.62.
So yeah, that was awesome. And with that being said, let's move on to the Heart Part 6, a definitive track for this project and for Kendrick Lamar's career as a whole. When you're talking the transformative phase of the hero's journey, I believe that lies in the Heart Part 6, because it's not just Kendrick telling you his story, but he's telling you where he wants to take it. In verse 1 of the Heart Part 6, Kendrick rewinds to his earliest TDE days. Long studio nights with Jack in the Box and Pepsi's, Ab-Soul writing in the corner, and J-Rock chasing that first major record deal. Kendrick admits that Ab-Soul was pivotal in shaping who he is as an MC, how he raps, how he writes his rhymes, and as far as J-Rock, Kendrick studied how to become a superstar from the plays that TDE was making when they were trying to make J-Rock the face of the label. But as Kendrick puts it, that was no shade to him, right? If he made it, then I made it. It meant the whole team was winning, and it shows his loyalty and hunger to his people that he started this thing with before anything ever took off. And by verse 2, K-Dot is honoring the people who he directly came up with. Dave Free, Mixed by Ali, Schoolboy Q, Top Dog, late nights sleeping in studio sessions, taking risks, helping Schoolboy Q learn how to rap, Schoolboy Q motivating Kendrick to let him know that he'll be the one that everyone should place their bets on. And by verse 3, the reflection turns into transformation. Kendrick admits where he went wrong, saying that Black Hippie didn't work out because of him. He accepts responsibility, and he explains his desire to evolve from a rapper to a leader, placing his skill set as a black exec. And the verse ends with Kendrick urging younger artists to resolve conflicts privately. Because even though he might have split from TDE, these are all the guys he started with, and this is where his loyalty still lies. He raps, if that's your family, then handle it as such. Don't let the socials gas you up or let emotions be your crutch. Pick up the phone and bust it up before the history is lost. Hand to handshake is good when you have a heart to heart. So with that, we get the final phase of the hero's journey that's displayed on GNX, and that's resolution. This is when Kendrick finally makes peace with himself and his art, and that comes on the outro track, Gloria. The whole song is built around the metaphor where Gloria isn't really a woman, but it's his music, something that's been with him since he was a kid, both saving him and hurting him along the way. In the first verse, he describes how their relationship started early. We started out young, looking for some identity, made 1,000 mistakes. He loved music before he even understood what it really was, and it pulled him away from friends and normal life. So territorial, even pulled me away from my friends. It gave Kendrick purpose, but also had control over him. In the second verse, Kendrick shows how that relationship with his pen evolved as he got older. He raps, in 2014, I went to Africa, you were my passenger, obviously talking about how his art traveled with him as his career expanded. And it shaped how he saw the world. But fame and ego cause trust issues. When he lies or loses focus, Gloria leaves him, showing how easy it is for artists to actually lose their creativity when they lose their honesty. And ultimately, the music, the pen, it speaks back to him. SZA, who plays Gloria here, has a little interlude where she says, I gave you life, I bring the blessings, I gave you power. She's flipping the roles here, speaking back to him, reminding him that she's the source of everything Kendrick's achieved. And by the last verse, Kendrick fully understands what Gloria represents. She's both the light and the dark. You either heal guys or you kill guys. His pen can either inspire or destroy. When he ends with, ain't no girl like my girl cause that girl been my pen, he's here revealing the truth. This whole song obviously being a love letter to his art. And ultimately, Gloria closes the story of GNX by showing Kendrick accepting everything. His flaws, his past, and his gift. After all the chaos, the self-doubt, the trials, tribulations, enemies that came his way, the desires he had for greatness, and the transformation taken to obtain it, throughout GNX, he ends off where he began. Writing. Well, really writing in his GNX with Anita Baker in the tape deck, because Gloria actually starts off with Dara Barrera. Sorry for mispronouncing her name. She's a regional Mexican singer whose vocals are sprinkled all throughout GNX. And on Gloria, she actually starts off the track saying, Sentado, Anita y tú. And this translates from Spanish to English saying, seated, Anita and you. And remember on Whacked Out Murals, he raps, riding in my GNX with Anita Baker in the tape deck. Kendrick here brings the hero's journey back full circle, right back to where it all began, the GNX car. Of course, on the opener, Whacked Out Murals, he's riding in his GNX with Anita Baker in the tape deck, setting out on his path through the chaos and the self-discovery, and by the outro, it begins, again, seated with Anita and you, showing that after everything, the battles, the lessons, and the growth, he's now right back in that same GNX car seat. But now, he's at peace with himself and his pen. Now, speaking of Dara Barrera, the Mexican regional singer that was sprinkled all throughout this project, it kind of speaks to how incredibly quick a lot of the concepts of this record were created, which further emphasize how current Kendrick Lamar wanted this project to feel. He said in an interview with Nadeska and Ebro when he was preparing for his Super Bowl show that everything he's doing, he wanted to feel like it represented the present, wherever he's at in this current period of time.
I'm infatuated with like now. I look at the present day and I see the goals that I sought out and that I accomplished. I feel like I'm gonna live a full life, man. Live a full life of inspiration.
And I think GNX perfectly encapsulates that, right? And to go back to what I was saying about him collaborating with Dara Barrera very recently before the project actually released, it was actually just weeks before GNX came out at a Dodgers game, and then he brought her to the studio. She actually spoke on the collaboration saying, my skin gets goosebumps because everything has happened so quickly. I didn't know what to expect. I'm a mariachi artist, not a rapper, but they wanted my style, my voice, and I had no idea how it would all come together. This is how a lot of aspects of GNX were cooked up as well. It wasn't just with her. The beat for the title track of GNX was actually only received by Kendrick Lamar just 2 days before the project came out. I love how he texted the guy, I want to experience some ignorant West Coast stuff, but let the drums have space. I'm about to hit the studio now. And I feel like a lot of the collaborations on this project were very free-flowing, very in the moment, very kind of just rapid pace, whatever Kendrick Lamar felt at that period of time, he just went with. I'm going to try to throw in some clips of some different artists who worked with Kendrick on the project, what they had to say about their experience with it. I know Lefty Gunplay said he was praying with Kendrick Lamar in the studio. Kendrick brought him closer to God.
I feel like Kendrick Lamar changed my life. A person of his caliber, you give a person a platform in a situation. I'm on the biggest song in the world. He gave it to me. He's trapped in with the streets. He put me on it and I'm gonna make him proud. I'm gonna put him on. He knows that was the best song. He could have put anybody on that song, you know? I appreciate everything Kendrick Lamar did for me. You know what I'm saying? He really changed my life.
AZ Chike got a damn record deal off of that one feature from the project. Hidda J3 is now celebrating being a Grammy-nominated artist because of his contributions to the album. Dodie 6, his situation didn't work out incredibly positively after the album release, but in my opinion, he had one of the best feature verses on that whole tape. So I hope he gets the help he needs. I'd love to hear more music from him. And he was actually serving, I believe, a 7-year prison bid, got out in about August of 2024, and then hopped on this GNX album. So that only gave him and Kendrick about 3-4 months to cook up, right? Showing you how quickly a lot of these songs and these collaborations were concocted. You also have the fact that Mustard only sent Kendrick Lamar, Not Like Us, just weeks before it actually released, along with a couple other records that made it onto GNX, showing that a lot of these beats Kendrick had, they weren't in his hands for a very long time before he actually put the album out. It seems like it was something that was put together at a very rapid pace to kind of capture that feeling that he wanted of it feeling very present and fun and hard-hitting West Coast music. Those are his words. And then as far as the legacy that GNX has left over the last 12 months that we've let it sit, we're now at the 1-year anniversary, right, guys? That's why I felt like putting this video together. I think the night that the album came out, I did a decent breakdown of it, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to really sit with this album and give you guys a full-fledged track-by-track breakdown at some point. It's sad that it came a year later, but there was so much going on in between. So many massive moments that it was hard to find the time to get to this and do it justice. So I'm happy that we finally did. And I mean, just to take a moment to reflect on some of the moments that came out from GNX. Remember that this is the first project Kendrick Lamar put out independent on his own PG Lang label. So the fact that he's performing these songs on stages like the Super Bowl, and now he's being nominated at the Grammys for these songs that he independently owns, not owes. It speaks volumes to what he was saying on The Heart Part 6, right? With his ambitions of now evolving into a black executive, beyond just an artist. And whether you want to look at him as just an artist or an executive, the numbers speak for themselves, right? This GNX album has now led Kendrick Lamar to have the highest grossing hip-hop tour in history, without even all the dates so far being tracked for how much revenue the tour has produced in total. The album now has almost 4 billion streams on Spotify, the quickest album, I believe, in hip-hop history to ever reach 3 billion streams on Spotify. It was the highest-selling hip-hop album of 2025 and, I believe, of 2024. I think it's certified 3 times platinum at this point. Luther's almost diamond. Highest viewed Super Bowl halftime show of all time, giving almost 10 different up-and-coming artists their first ever Grammy nomination, putting a bunch of underground West Coast artists onto this album when everyone is talking about Kendrick Lamar does not put enough people on, being the most nominated rapper at this year's Grammy Awards, majority 4 songs off of this project. This project potentially and probably about to become the first hip-hop album in over 20 years to win Album of the Year at the Grammy Awards. Whether you want to believe my theory or not, it's fair to say that whatever video game or real-life game Kendrick Lamar is playing, he's winning. And GNX ultimately encapsulates and perfectly documents that hero's journey, the evolution, and the victory lap. But let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you in the next one.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.